Welcome to the Parker Podcast Collection.
Exception thread range other.9.null pointer exception at client.add client synchronization.java 69 at client driver.main client driver.java 666.
Welcome to the Not Playing Podcast. My name's Rob Howard, and this week I'm joined by
Ian Bruce and Patrick Kane.
You can contact us on email at notplayingpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at notplayingpod. Me and Patrick went to EGX Rezzed the other week, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was almost night and day compared to the big EGX show we went to at Earl's Court.
Yeah, it was so different.
Right, okay.
Well, fundamentally, you know, when we went to that, it was basically like, we'd like to play that game, but it's a 2-hour queue.
Yeah.
Admittedly, they were the big, noisy AAA games, but EGX Rezzed was more like you were just walking around and people would literally go, come here and play my game. So, yeah, it really was a totally different experience. It was at Tobacco Dock, which I believe is some kind of shopping centre which puts on these expos and that. Xbox had a presence, PS3 had a presence, but more importantly, it was all about the indie devs, really. And yeah, we got to play a few things. Did you want to mention anything in particular, Pat?
Amiga Agent, I think, was the thing that really stood out the most. And I played quite a few things, but that was the one that really jumped out. So that's being developed for GearVR now, I believe, as well as Oculus Rift. And it's basically like this kind of very kind of cartoony-looking jetpack game where you're in this kind of alternate future 50s kind of world, and it's all kind of pastel, and you kind of move around in this cool jetpack and you're collecting stuff, and it just kind of, it really impressed me just because of how comfortable it was, considering what it was doing.
From a movement point of view? From a
VR movement point of view,
because it is throwing you around a bit, isn't it?
It is, and they used a very clever trick. Basically, there's a grid on the skybox is essentially a grid which is tied to your direction, so it moves as you move.
Right.
Meaning that it's like this grid that's in front of you is never moving while the world is. And I asked him when I finished playing it if that was to combat Rift sickness and VR sickness, and he said yeah, that's why they did it, and it totally works. It's really interesting. I mean, obviously that's kind of limiting. You can't put a grid on every single skybox in every single game.
No.
But it's interesting that it works so well for that kind of thing. And also you've got this kind of cage frame around you that you can that you would sort of hold on to on this jetpack. But yeah, it was just really, really cool. And they had I love the kind of quirky menu as well, which was like this cool little station that you're in where you've got everything. You can look all around you and you've got these different parts of the menu. I just thought it was just a really interesting title. And yeah, that was one of the ones that stood out the most.
Fireproof make that, and I was talking to one of the developers there. He was there basically putting the headset on us and that, and basically it's their concept for a sort of Nintendo super accessible style game in VR. And I have to say they completely succeeded with that. It's probably the most fun I've had so far in VR, in my limited experience, just because the sensation of movement as you're flying around, the emphasis on keeping elevation, and also there's a move which kind of sort of like you have a thrust move which sort of pushes you forwards and very fast, and just being able to fly in and around those buildings. There was, I think I got to a point where you get those objectives where you've got to like fly through hoops and stuff. Sort of reminded me of like Pilot Wings.
It had a real kind of 90s vibe, didn't it? A real kind of N64 era sort of vibe, and I think it was really cool because of that. But yeah, like I totally agree. Like I think like I said, the thing that really stood out to me is that it was the combination of like the freedom of movement and also like the comfort, bearing that in mind. So I thought that was really impressive.
Yeah, and that's apparently exclusive for GearVR at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, it was in September 2014. It may well change, but at the moment, what other VR platform do you want to be exclusive to? That's like the only one that most people can go into a shop and buy.
Their website it's still calling it our Samsung Gear VR game. So
yeah, I think we were playing on a DK2 though.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, it looks like all their marketing is exclusive for Gear VR, and that's what a great. I mean, yeah, you know, when you asked me a couple of episodes ago, what one would I get? Oh, I don't know now, because that's a really good vehicle for Gear VR, definitely.
Yeah, I'll definitely be picking it up when it comes out. That's for sure.
Cool. Game that I thought was very impressive was Volume, which is Mike Bithell's new game. I've seen plenty about this, and I'd watched videos of it being played, but it wasn't until I sat down and played it myself that I kind of got it. A huge part of my enjoyment comes from the sound design. It's very cool and sci-fi-y. It's essentially like the early Metal Gear games where it was top-down and you're basically evading security dudes and traps and things like that. I only played through the first few levels, but I really enjoyed it. I also enjoy the conceit that it's effectively Robin Hood. You're playing like as Robin of Locksley, and you've got to take on the sheriff and all that. And a lot of that sort of narrative is delivered via these kind of like still shots, 2D art and stuff. But just the act of playing the game, it just feels ever so slick, similar to like how like Deus Ex, the last Deus Ex felt like that sort of sound visual vibe, you know. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't dismiss that one out of hand just from the look of it. It's definitely worth a go.
Well, they made Thomas Was Alone, didn't they? Which was a great game. I absolutely loved that.
Yeah, the guy is like, these games are like designed to an inch of their lives, basically. You know, he iterates and iterates, and it's normally quite a simplistic thing that he's trying to get across, but just the execution, it's all about the execution, you know. And I think this has got a similar kind of voiceover as well. It's not the same guy, I don't think, but he's got some good voice talent working on the game as well, I think.
Yeah. Another one that really stood out to me actually was Soul Axiom, which I don't know why I'd never picked up on this one before, but yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous looking. Basically it's a kind of a puzzle game. It's a first-person puzzle game. The mechanic seems to revolve around. In the demo we played, you kind of picked up this artifact which turned one of your hands into like this kind of skeletal hand, and that became like the one that could manipulate the objects in the world, and you could kind of change these very large objects, you know, so you could like rotate a huge object and that would spin this kind of little laser thing round, and that would activate a certain part of the map. And it's got like it's interesting. It's got like a kind of sort of low poly, but like really interestingly, I don't know, it's quite hard to explain really. It's got this just really kind of lovely glow about the whole thing, and I was really surprised when he told me it was Unity. It didn't. I was.
Don't say it, mate. What? It didn't look like Unity. I know. Wow.
I know, but no. And to be fair, it really did surprise me when he told me that. It's a gorgeous looking game, but yeah, I'm really interested to play this one.
It's actually on early access on Steam at the moment, and I think it's come out on Xbox, or at least that's what I played it on at the show, was on an Xbox One.
Oh yeah, you did, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was available. I think you could play it on a PC as well, but when I played it, it was on an Xbox One.
Yeah, I played it on the PC version, but yeah. Do you know when the Xbox version's coming out?
Not off the top of my head.
You can also get it directly from the developer's website for $20. I do believe the developer gets more money if you buy it direct and not through Steam. You'll probably get a Steam key.
True, yeah.
I think it's out for Xbox One now.
Oh, really?
That's March 29th at the Express. I think, is it here? Oh no, that's Axiom Verge.
That's
I
probably
saw
a
that
different game, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw, oh, here we go. Coming to Xbox One. Just says later this year. I guess when it comes out of early access on Steam, it'll be out on Xbox. Okay, what else did we play? Oh yeah, I played this crazy, like, bullet hell shooter called Steraden, which was, well, the developer I was speaking to was French, and it was one of those games where I was like, it's really useful that you're standing here watching me play, because it means I can strangle you. It was that kind of level of frustration, you know? Yeah, it was quite good, quite simplistic pixel art. But yeah, I actually got to play Crystal Rift
Hurrah!
for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we actually got to talk to Nick and the other creators of the game. Had a really nice chat with them. They demonstrated the level construction tools, which you can do all in VR without coming out of the game. Which, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, very, very cool that you can essentially custom make your own maps, and the guys were saying that, like, part of the reason they wanted to do that is kind of a selfish one, in that they would really like people to recreate things like the original Eye of the Beholder, and you know, all these games that it's kind of influenced, you know, like things like Legend of Ishtar, Nightmare. There was that really cool kind of Nightmare game in the early 90s, I think. So yeah, I think that's really, really cool. They're giving people the ability to just actually inside the game build their own dungeons that other people can play through. I think that's awesome.
The one thing that got me about the game, though, and I also noticed it's a bit in what's the Dread Halls.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the scale. Like it seems like they're sort of on purpose making it really claustrophobic. Because when I'm playing those games in 2D, I always imagine these dungeons to be quite big. But it seems that, like, both the guys making Dread Halls and the Crystal Rift team, like, they just want to make it really nasty and small, like I'm in some kind of horrible little haunted house.
Well, they actually have a different approach, because Dread Halls has, like, very low. You can hardly see far in front of you, but it's not kind of different field of view. But Crystal Rift has got a different field of view, and I asked Nick about that, and he said the reason was that he wanted it so that you could always see things in a given room. So you've got, like, if you're in one of the rooms at the start, there's this lever on the wall. If they had gone with, like, a traditional FOV, it would be too far away and you wouldn't see it.
Right.
So it's basically a way of kind of containing people in that space and allowing them to see all of the dungeon where even though it's all kind of dark and dingy and small. So
it's a design choice.
It is a design choice, yeah.
I asked them the very same thing at Southwest VR, and they said the very same thing. So, I mean, but it's good that other people are spotting it and querying it.
Yeah, sorry. So, for people that weren't tuning in previously, Crystal Rift is like a one of your old dungeon crawler games where the levels are sort of split up into, like, squares, and you're, like, navigating them sort of by moving at 90-degree turns and, you know, forward, backwards, very quite linear navigational movement, and
like a chessboard, type thing.
Yeah. So and interestingly, there's no combat as such, but it's more sort of puzzles and navigational obstacles. There were certainly a few moments where I was pressing forward for a while and going, I'm still pressing forward, and then a thing jumped out at me and I was like, ah! So, they're definitely playing around with some interesting tropes there. And it looks like there's some really interesting level design there, and I was really impressed. So, yeah, there was a few other things there, but didn't really get a lot of time with it. Like I said, Xbox had a presence there. PlayStation had a presence there. They were showing off Bloodborne, which looked very slick, and I understand is very slick from the reviews it's been getting.
When you say PlayStation, do you mean Sony?
Yeah, Sony. Right. Yeah. Okay. There was basically a room that had it was the most wonderfully smelling room I've ever been in my life. It had a load of PlayStations with Bloodborne on it, and then it had Heroes of the Storm, the new Blizzard MOBA.
How did it smell? How did it smell?
It smelt like
cheesy sweaty teen. Okay, right.
Yeah, it was pretty awful.
Right.
But yeah, enough said about that. As well as that, there was in the evening. We went on the Thursday, and that evening they actually had the Gaming BAFTAs. So we announced the nominations for these a while ago. It's interesting to see who won. Vanishing of Ethan Carter got Game Innovation. Alien Isolation won Best Audio.
Damn straight.
Yeah, I'm just literally scrolling through these now, mentioning the ones that are interesting. Middle Earth got Best Game Design. Last of Us Left Behind got Best Story. Yeah, that was 2014. Wow, yeah, that was ages ago. I remember that coming out like over a year ago now. But yeah, so that was pretty cool.
How is anybody? Have you played League of Legends? Why is League of Legends a persistent game, or is it just always bloody there? People are bloody playing it, kind of persistent.
It's a MOBA, isn't it? It's like an industry to itself. I think they had an area there. The company that makes that, they had an area there at EGX Rezzed.
Right.
Yeah. Persistent game. Yeah, I guess. Well, persistent in the sense that it's like all leagues and stuff.
Okay.
I guess.
Gotcha. Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, David Braben got the Fellowship Award, which I imagine is it's well deserved, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Put out a brilliant game recently. Yeah, what better way of crowning that achievement? Yeah, and I think that's all we've got for EGX Rezzed and the BAFTAs.
So, of the two EGXs that you've been to, which one would you go back to? Would you go back to the big
this one.
carnival festival
Easily
circus
this one, yeah.
last year, or this one?
Last year, the one basically finding the indie section of last year's one was the highlight, and this year the whole thing was that indie section with a kind of couple of token AAA rooms.
So is Rezzed a more indie specific one, or did they just not have any big things there to make it like a circus?
Rezzed always started like a sort of PC indie event.
Okay.
It's broadened a little just because things have broadened a little. But yeah, EGX is the big noisy one, which is happening this year at Birmingham NEC.
Right.
And EGX Rezzed is the one that always happens somewhere in the middle of London, and is for a longer time. And they have more talks, like talks that you could just walk in and out of. They had, we missed it, but Valve were there showcasing Vive. I think that was on the Friday.
Okay.
But yeah, we went on the Thursday, so we missed quite a lot of the cool stuff. But like, you could go all weekend and you'd see different talks and stuff, but you'd pretty much run out of games to play, I would have thought.
Unless you wanted to stand around and talk to the devs, and that would be appealing, I guess.
Well, it's certainly an environment to do that in, and I would definitely recommend going next year.
I'm up for next year, I think. Oh no,
yeah,
hold on, when was it?
Well, it was March.
Okay, I can't do anything next year in March.
Okay. Well, I don't know. It might not be March. Who knows?
Okay.
That's when it was this year, though. And so that's it for the for EGX Rezzed and the BAFTAs. This has been the Not Playing Podcast in partnership with notlistening.co.uk. You can get me on Twitter at Bobby Rocker, BOBIROKA.
I'm at EboGB, which is EBOWGB.
And I'm at Patrick J KAY.
You can contact us on email at notplayingpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at notplayingpod. You can find the show notes for this show at notlistening.co.uk. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, then please do give us a review. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for listening. See ya!
Goodbye, dear listener.
Say you want me back. Say you want me back. me back. Say you want me back.